Well, today is Saturday. What is it? February 17th. I'm out working. Just did one disappointing trip from this Kinjo, Japanese food place. And these guys are always so busy. Like, I don't know why they call drivers before the food is ready. So I go in, I wait probably 15 minutes. I ask them, okay, how much longer? They say, well, they just put that chicken in the fryer. Like this, my customer ordered a specific type of chicken, like a breaded chicken, but with specific flavor. And they were out. And so they said, we just put it in the fryer. It's going to be another 10-15 minutes. So I go into the app. I say, okay, unassign. I don't want to wait 15 minutes because it'll be like 30 minutes. And this only pays like $7 for 6-kilometer drive. But when I picked up that order, I was sitting right next to the restaurant. So I just walked. So basically there was no deadhead kilometers, right? But still, $7 for 6 kilometers. And then, so I wanted to unassign, basically take this order off of me. But they said, okay, how much longer, like we'd prefer that you stay, whatever. So I said, okay. I went back. I said, okay, I'll wait. And then I drove 6 kilometers, 4 miles. And when I dropped it on their porch, took a picture, I see the final result. So the base pay was $4.25. And the customer tipped me $2. $6.20, no, I think it was more. Should be like $7 or something. And I sent him a message because they always say if there's a delay, notify your customer. So when I was inside the restaurant, I sent him a quick message. And speaking about tips, I just read a story because I'm guessing Google noticed my interest on the phone. I was searching for stories about Lyft and Uber, a rideshare gig economy. And each time I open my phone, when I read some Google news, there's some story about Lyft and Uber and DoorDash. And the other day, I read that turns out people that move passengers, like Uber, taxi, and Lyft, turns out they get much fewer tips than food delivery drivers. They say that only 13% of Uber drivers, with Uber ride, with passengers, received tips, whereas with food, when they surveyed a bunch of people, 90% of food delivery drivers like me receive tips. And so that just, because I keep thinking about upgrading my license so I can do taxi, like Uber taxi, but the more I read about this, the more it seems like a bad idea, right? And just now, again, I'm waiting for another order. It's dead for some reason. It's Saturday, 1 o'clock probably. I opened Google News, and there's another story about the protests in Toronto. In Toronto, Canada, DoorDash, Uber, and Lyft drivers are on strike. Basically, I think it was yesterday. They all refused to start the app, so there's no drivers, right? But this story was about the actual wait. So Uber claims that their Uber taxi drivers make on average $33 an hour. And so the guy who wrote the story, they surveyed not that much, but like 96 people, 96 drivers for Lyft and Uber, and they discovered that the actual wage after expenses, like after maintenance and gas, on average was in US dollars anywhere between $6.33 to $10.60 per hour. So basically like $10 Canadian, 6 it's 10 Canadian, so 10, 13. So, which is in Ontario below the minimum wage. And they said in many instances, these guys, they lost money once you deduct gas and maintenance and let's say parking and fines, when you get some, parking tickets in downtown, let's say Toronto, right? And the surveyor, the guy who wrote this, he says this aligns actually with data they have from US, whereas they say in California, the average salary of an Uber / Lyft driver in $6.26 an hour, $6. In Seattle, it's $9.63. So Seattle guys are laughing on the way to the bank. $9.63 US per hour. And Denver, you would think Denver, Colorado has the biggest airport, and yet the survey says that the average pay after expenses for their drivers, Lyft and Uber, was $5.49 per hour. So basically, which tells me again that there's no reason to upgrade from DoorDash and Uber Eats to Uber Taxi, because it's what gonna happen. It's only gonna get worse. At least now I can choose my orders and I get tips. Whereas if I switch to Uber Taxi, so there'll be much fewer tips, right? And I think Uber says they pay 80 cents per kilometer in Canada, but only on kilometers you travel with the customer. So they can send you 10 kilometers to the pickup location for free, and then let's say you drive that guy for 3 kilometers, so that means they will pay you 3 times 0.8, they'll pay you $2.40, and chances are you will not get a tip, right? And so that's just ridiculous. And so the more I read about this, the more I'm leaning towards I still want to do something. It's still not enough money here with this food delivery. A couple of my highest weekly earnings so far, gross before expenses, was $785 Canadian, but that's before gas, and I don't even take into account maintenance, because my Jeep is like 8 months old. But I did buy tires. I did buy winter tires, which was like $1,400 in November. And so yeah, taxi doesn't make any sense. I think I can actually make more money doing this. I just have to be more disciplined and stay longer at night. Like yesterday, it was very slow Friday during the day, but then at night it really picked up, like 7-8 o'clock, and I was already tired, so I made my like $125 and I just went home. But my phone kept beeping and buzzing. There were orders, but they were cheap. Like one order I remember yesterday, they wanted me to drive 10 kilometers to a pickup location and then deliver like 3 kilometers away, and this paid like $10. And I said, screw this. Oh, and it was going away from my home, where I was closer to downtown. So I started looking for orders that would take me northeast Calgary, where I live. But these were all going west, northwest, and then I have to drive like 35 kilometers back home. But anyway, made $125 yesterday. Not too bad, but basically just it was probably in, I don't know, 7.5 hours, half of which I was just sitting on my butt, just like now, waiting for work. But once you pick up something, you see, like I think with Uber passenger, you don't have that flexibility where you can pick up orders, where most of the time I just decline 95% of Uber Eats, because it's like less than 50 cents per kilometer. So I only take something that pays like $8 for 3 kilometers, I only take, and they don't punish you. One cool thing about Uber Eats is that so far I have not seen any downside of canceling offers, like they don't have any system like DoorDash. DoorDash says, okay, you need to have your acceptance rate at least 50% to get good orders, and then once you reach 50, 50% acceptance. Once you reach 50, they say, okay, you're gonna get better orders if you raise your acceptance rate to 70, and that's the highest. And so now I keep declining. If there's something really cheap, I decline unless I hit 70, and then I have to take 1 or 2 to get back. So I'm trying not to drop mine below 70. And with DoorDash, I know right now, so if the order says $4, that means there's no tip. because that's the base pay is 4 or 425 for a trip. And so, but yesterday I did one. I saw it was cheap, but I was like 69% acceptance rate, so I needed to bring it to 70. So I took this, it was $4, so I could see right away there's no tip, but the distance was like less than a kilometer, just go around the building. And I did that, and I wanted to go back, and once I saw the final screen with the pay, what the trip paid, and I see tip 0, I wanted to go back and and confront the customer. But of course, that would never work, because all they would do is they will get pissed off and they would knock down your rating, because that's another thing that's important with DoorDash. You have to keep your rating above 4.92, or they can cancel you. They can cancel your contract. So mine right now, I think I'm sitting at 4.93. And for a long time it was 5, which is the highest, but 493 is okay. But it just, I don't know what I did. Maybe one order was delayed because they sent me to pick up another order, and so that customer was not happy that I did not tell him that I had another order before him. And then I think once maybe I might have dropped it at the wrong apartment, but I always double check the apartment number, like a house number before I do the final drop. Like when I'm walking, I'm just looking at the phone. Okay, make sure. Okay, 110, building 110. Okay, and then I take a picture. But I remember one guy was texting me, okay, where did you leave the order? It was a big apartment building. And so yeah, so you don't want to confront people, because that will affect your rating, right? So you want to be friendly, pleasant, neatly dressed. I always say enjoy. When I give them food, I say enjoy, have a good day. But I remember it was on the news, actually. It was on the news. One guy was delivering food somewhere in the States, and it was a huge house. Like you could see that it's like worth a couple $1 million. And the guy delivered some food, and when he dropped it off, of course, his phone shows him the final tally, right? Like how much base pay, how much tip. And as he's walking away from the door, from the customer, his phone beeps and he can see all the info. And he saw that he was paid $5 in tips. And he came back and he said, $5 for a house with a house like this? Come on. So he started an argument. And of course, they complained to Uber or DoorDash, whoever he did this order for. So it's never a good idea, right? So it's never gonna work. So if people don't want to tip, you cannot force them. And one guy left a comment saying that in Australia they don't tip. Well, then you belong in Australia. Here you have to tip, okay? In restaurants you tip. I usually, when I was a trucker, I usually tipped mechanics, working on my truck, because I know those poor guys, they work like for, I don't know, $10-15 an hour, so I would usually go get some cash, give him a tip, like for a good service. Of course, yeah, if the guy did something, broke some bulb or something, I'm not gonna give him a tip. But if there's some kind of service involved, I give him a tip, But to be honest, if I go and I do a takeout myself, let's say I go inside the restaurant and I do a takeout, I usually don't give him a tip, or if I do, I choose like 10%. But if I'm outside the restaurant, I'm sitting down, I would give him 15%, maybe 10 if it was not good. If they miss something, like I ask them not to include any dairy or cheese. If they screwed something up, I'll give them 5, whatever, But in very rare instances, you don't give any tip at a restaurant. And so delivery, food delivery, should be tipped. But if people don't feel like tipping, that of course that's their right. But it's too bad, like with Uber Taxi, you can rate passengers. Like passengers give you a rating and you can give them a rating, But unfortunately, we cannot do that with DoorDash and Uber Eats. So I cannot I cannot rate my customers. So anyway, so I hope that would help somebody who's thinking about doing DoorDash and Uber Eats in Canada or US. So basically, so far my experience has been that it's, if you want to do this, maybe a couple of nights a week, it's better to stick with deliveries instead of moving people, because you will get more tips. Thanks for watching.